I'd like to invite you to imagine a classic DiPasquale family story. I'm 4 years old and my grandpa's just taken me to the park, and we do the typical things that grandsons and grandpas do at the park. You know, he pushes me on the swings, catches me off the slide, and just kind of watches when I make believe the monkey bars are some sort of spaceship. And at one point I sit in his lap and I say, "Abuelo, I'd really love to read a book." And he says, "Well, that's fine, Daniel, but we don't have one." And I say, "Oh, it's okay. We'll just use our imagination." And I proceed to read my grandfather an invisible book. I follow the text with my fingers. I point out things in the illustrations I think he'll like. And before turning each page, I either summarize what we just said or I'll offer a leading question in anticipation. And at one point, I turn the page, I read a few words, and I just start laughing, like uproarious, uncontrollable laughter, to the point that my grandfather has to ask, like, "Dan, what's so funny?" And I say, "I am so sorry. I skipped a page." And I turn the page back, and I read from the previous page. And when I turned it back again, not only did I say the same thing I said 2 minutes earlier, but now it actually fit the story. Now, you might hear the story and think, "Wow, Dan, you have a really vivid imagination." Or you might just think I was a weird little kid. But either way, I'm telling you this story because I'm worried that imagination's in danger. See, today I think this moment is less and less likely to happen, because as soon as we realize we want something we don't have with us, and you can fill in the blanks on what that is, we reach for our pockets, our pocketbooks, our backpack and briefcase, and there it is, on our phone or tablet or what have you. Technology has given us some incredible gifts, and while I'm grateful for them, I'm worried that we haven't really evaluated all the costs, particularly for imagination. Now, if I'm going to defend imagination, I think it's important that we first agree that imagination is not just something for children. Neither is play. See, I think play can be this low-stakes environment where we're able to experiment with some new perspectives, try out some new skills, and refine skills that we've had for some time. It's the reason we have young kids play sports, right? To learn sportsmanship, dedication, teamwork, physical fitness. It's also why when I do crossword puzzles, people tell me, "Oh man, when you're old, you're going to be great, you know, sharp mind and all that." It's not always, but play has the potential to help us learn and grow. And I think one of the parts of us that helps grow most profoundly is our imagination. See, imagination, I think, is a profound, central part of the human person. And two men have particularly influenced my perspectives on this. The first is Ignatius of Loyola, the founder of the Jesuits. And I think Ignatius realized that our imagination is a means to access parts of ourselves that we're not aware of. In the spiritual exercises, he has people put themselves in the place of the gospel characters upon which they're reflecting. Whatever character speaks to you is fine. You could be an angel above the manger, or the baby in the manger, or a donkey beside the manger, or just a person walking by. Really, whatever speaks to you is fine, but let the sights, the sounds, the smells, and most importantly, the emotions of the scene guide your meditation. I think of a Jesuit from my undergrad university who put himself in the place of doubting Thomas at the end of John's Gospel. Thomas is absent the first time Jesus appears to the disciples after the resurrection, and he says he won't believe that it happened unless he can put his finger in the nail marks and his hand in Jesus' side. Well, in the next story, Jesus comes back and Thomas is there, and this time he says, "Go ahead, put your finger in my hand and your hand in my side." This Jesuit, imagining this scene, did. And when his spiritual director told him, no, that Thomas wouldn't do that. That's not in the text. That's not in the story. He realized through his imagination his own need for empirical proof, for something other than mere faith. I think this skill of adjusting the arbitrary details and honing in on the core essence of something is a skill we need today because it helps us build multiple perspectives. It helps us to connect to people that are different from us. The other man who's helped me understand imagination is James Fowler. Those of us familiar with Fowler know him as the pioneer developmental psychologist who first came up with a stage model for understanding faith, growth, and development. Fowler uses the word faith, where today we'd probably use the word spirituality, but his point's just as poignant. He says that we can understand our faith to be imagination, because we have these overarching narratives. They're often pre-verbal, and through these narratives we understand not just our own lives, but life as it exists. And anytime we have an event or an experience, it has to fit this narrative. And if it doesn't, two of our healthiest options are either to reinterpret this event so that it does fit, or to adjust our narrative. Perhaps you can imagine a little girl who says, "I don't understand. I thought bad things only happen to bad people, but they say mommy's going to die. Mommy's not a bad person, and this death thing seems bad. Maybe bad things happen to good people. Maybe mommy's a bad person. I don't understand. That tension we feel in different forms all throughout our lives. And the mechanism that we use to push that tension into the next stage of development is our imagination. But my worry is not that imagination is going to fade away. It's a fundamental part of our human person. But the danger is atrophy, is decay, is that we aren't using our imagination enough to keep it fresh. I realized this most clearly recently when I went to the cell phone store and asked for a not smartphone. I prefer the term not smart to dumb. And I only had 2 options, but they wouldn't offer me the one because there's so many issues with it. So this was the only option I had. It's nothing fancy, but it's pretty much a given now where I am that smartphones are what you're going to have. And I think it's not just where I am. So if this is our given, what are we giving up? And that's what I'd like to think about today. So maybe a good starting point is to ask ourselves, how has technology affected our ability to process information? Have you ever watched a film and recognized an actor that you couldn't quite identify, right? What happens in that moment? I remember being a little boy with my dad in the movie theater many, many times and looking up and seeing, yep, Dad, that's right, Mob Man number 4 was henchman number 3 in that other film. Can we go now? Now we don't wait at all. In fact, it's instantaneous because as soon as someone says, oh, I recognize that guy, what was he in? Or, who sings this? I've heard her before. Or, oh, this is delicious. How does someone make something like that? Someone in the group inevitably says, oh, I can look it up, yeah. That immediacy is an incredible gift, but it comes at a big cost. Now, what's the cost? Some people, I think, would just say, well, you know, it's a chance to wonder. Other people might say it's a chance to wander through our memory. But I think, when we think about it, we're losing a moment to exercise our imagination. Because I know for me, I'm looking at this guy and I'm thinking, maybe if I give him a mustache, or maybe if I put him in a cop outfit, or give him a Russian accent, or longer hair, or take off 20 pounds, age him 20 years, whatever. We're adjusting these arbitrary details. The same skill for building multiple perspectives, and I think it's the same skill necessary for complex moments of empathy. Have you ever had a moment where you thought, like, I have no idea what I'm going to say to her. Like, I have no idea what it's like to bury my own child. But I know what it's like to be a parent, and I remember what it was like when my mom died, so maybe we can connect. I'm not saying that people that can identify movie actors are more empathetic, but I think what I am saying is they exercise this part of their human person more frequently. And it's a space we need to create. So how do we create it? Well, my brother and sister and I, we like to play this game whenever we go out, restaurant or movie theater or something. We never decide we're playing it, we never say we're playing it, but we see somebody and we're always thinking, like, who is this the fusion of? You know, you'd be amazed how many people are some fusion of Bruce Willis and my pediatrician. Especially because I had more than one pediatrician. And what's great about this is if you're lousy at this, who cares? Low stakes, play. And if you're good at it, who cares? Low stakes, play. But the point is we're exercising part of our person. Now, some people aren't good with visual data. So my wife and I, when we're in the car, sometimes we imagine, what if the singer was someone different singing the same song? There are comedians that do this really well, having Louis Armstrong sing things he's never heard before. But what if the next time you heard a Lady Gaga song, you imagined it sung by Frank Sinatra or Dylan or a Muppet, right? And if you do it well, if you have a good impression, who cares? And if you do it poorly, it doesn't matter. It's about creating a space because we need to process. We can't have something do it for us all the time. So our ability to process has changed because we've outsourced it. But what's really scary about that is our perception of our processing abilities hasn't changed alongside that. I mean, by point of contrast, have you ever been telling someone about a song and just really wanting them to hear it, and all of a sudden it plays on the radio, and like the world just aligned for you in that moment? It's great, right? I feel like that happens less now, because as soon as I want to communicate something, I say, oh, like, can you just grab it? Or what's more impressive, I can conjure something I've never heard of because you asked me to. if I have my wife's smartphone. So the point I'm trying to make is we have this incredibly extensive, powerful reach in our pocket. It's not just music. Have you found yourself recently at the corner of two streets you've never heard of before, but knew you were fine getting home? Or maybe there was a trivia debate in a long car ride, and you said, oh, I'll settle this now. What are we losing in these little moments? I think we're losing loss. And you might say, that's great. But I don't think it is. Because we'll never lose all loss. They're just little micro losses. I wish you had been there, or I wish I could remember, or you should have seen it. When we have these micro losses, they undermine this really dangerous overarching narrative that's taking a lot of power today. It could be summarized, I'm at the autonomous, omnipotent center of my universe. No one would ever come out and say that, but I know our behaviors speak for how we think it. So how do we compensate for that? That's a tall order. I don't know that I can do it. But I've been thinking a lot, and Ignatius of Loyola comes back to mind once again. I think Ignatius recognized the incredible power of unselective remembering and forgetting. Twice a day, he has his followers pray a prayer called the Examen, in which we sit in grateful silence and just let the memories of the day wash over us. We don't decide what we're going to think of. We just let it come, the sights, the sounds, the smells, and most importantly, the emotions. And as it washes over us, we start to realize things have power over us we didn't recognize. Wow, I forgot that I saw that car crash on the way to work, and it's been staying with me all day. Or, wow, I was really mad at her earlier, and I'm not feeling that at all right now. As we do these moments, we start to just recognize we're not omnipotent, but in a way that invites us, in a way that says, I have something to offer, I have a place to respond. And I think it does it lovingly. So we're processing less, but we think we're processing better. But what's even scarier is that we don't even realize, as we think we're processing more, there's less for us to process. You may not believe me, but I was thinking about this after this story I saw on ABC World News. Two men went to opposite ends of a hallway, and they emailed each other back and forth. It went something like this. Hey, I'd really like to get some Chinese food tonight in the city. You want to go? And he sends the email, and there was the advertisement. Chinese food deals in the city. And then at the other end of the hall, the guy gets the email and says, oh, yeah, that's great, but I got a flat tire on the way to work. I don't know where to stop. Well, now I do. Discount tire deals near you. They went back and forth for some time, and the story was focusing on privacy issues. But for me, it's about exposure. I think technology has helped us be direct, to refine and filter exactly what we want. But how do we know what we want? I mean, maybe you, like me, listen to these radio stations where you can like this song and not like that song, so you only get certain songs. Or maybe there's actually a box I've seen commercials for where it recommends shows for you. You don't have to channel surf anymore. What's the loss there? I think the loss has to do with just random stumbling, haphazard discovery, which is really important for our growth. You know, I used to teach high school, and we used to say, if a kid has never heard a clarinet, how's he going to know he doesn't want to play it? And I don't want statistics to ever determine whether my kid hears a clarinet or not. So how do I compensate for that? Well, I don't have kids yet, and I hope to one day. And if we do, I want to have this day called Encyclopedia Day, where I take the kids to the library and we grab the children's encyclopedia. For the younger people in the crowd, an encyclopedia is the book version of Google. And we're just gonna, guys, we're gonna pick a letter. What's the letter for today, guys? C. Awesome, great. What words start with the letter C? Let's see, carrots, corn, and cucumbers. You can tell I don't have kids. And so we're gonna look through this children's encyclopedia for these three things. And you know what? Along the way, we're gonna get distracted. We're gonna, oh, Dad, what's that? A coral reef, cool. Chameleons, awesome. I don't know, cabbage, whatever. Who am I to tell my kid what's gonna be cool for them? And I really want them to have a space where they can discover that safely and explore that safely. And you know what? If we never make it to cucumbers at the end of the day, it's fine. It's not about having an objective. It's about having a space to play. Now, adults may not feel inclined towards Encyclopedia Day, so there's other things we can do. My wife and I get a community share of vegetables. And so each week we pick up this box of vegetables and we have no idea what we're going to get. And we take it home and we open it and we're like, yes, sweet potatoes again. That looks like an alien. And if you've never seen kohlrabi before, it really does. But as we start exploring and experimenting, we say, like, all right, like, let's see what we can do with this. You can make really good chips out of this, actually. Or I'm not going to have radishes in the future. But either way, it's low stakes. It's exposure that at the end of the day, if we suffer through a rough meal, that's fine. But we tried something new and expanded ourselves just a little bit. Whatever space you create for yourself, I think we have to create it because these little moments are getting outsourced. We have to be intentional. One last image. I'm 4 years old, once again. And my mom's doing dishes. And I come up behind her and I say, hey, Mom, I have a question for you. How does Santa get in our living room? And Mom goes, what's that? I said, well, you know, we don't have a chimney. So how does he get in the living room? And my mom very wisely said, I don't know. What do you think, Dan? So I looked around the living room and I thought about it and I said, oh, well, Mom, you know what? We do have a mail slot. And I know Santa's kind of magic, so I bet he can shrink, pop through the mail slot, get big, drop off the presents, and then at that point he's on the inside, so you can unlock the door, walk out, lock it behind him, and go. Right? And my mom said, could be. Could be. Thank you very much.